All right, and we're live.
Let's go.
Hey,
Dude,
what's up, y'all?
what a crazy week. I mean, this might have been the best week we've had so far.
Mm,
I don't know about that. This week is pretty shit, to be honest with you.
I mean,
well,
on
he just
paper, it
won
looked
next
like
week's
it's going to be a
Premier
shit
League.
week. But then you have Thursday night football, Rams upsetting the Vikings. You have the Browns upsetting the Ravens. You have that Cardinals Dolphins game that actually turned out to be a really good game. You had Patriots becoming the first team ever to, what was it? Let me pull up the stat. It was the The Jets were the
The stat
first
is
team in
the
NFL
stat is
history
the Jets are gonna jet.
to score 20 points, not turn the ball over, allow fewer than 250 yards, and still lose. And we just had good games across the slate. Like Falcons Bucks was a good game. Packers Jaguars was a good game. Texans Colts ended up being a good game. And then of course you had the Commanders Bears. What an ending to that game. Calvin, I know you got some thoughts on it. Let's hear it.
Um, First of all, I believe that pass was the longest pass to what was it? Longest time before a throw.
Yeah,
It was
from
like
snap to throw.
12.6 seconds. Yeah, 12.6 seconds. Once again, another reason why you need a mobile quarterback. Because even if guys rush three, they'll probably still get there within like 6 seconds. So, I mean, that if he wasn't mobile, that play would never happen. Let's just be honest. Um, I think scramble drills are really valuable for offenses if they really know how to utilize them. If their receivers aren't dumb and like know where to move. Um, I mean, look, I understand the Bears' pain. I'm gonna take y'all to I believe it was 2021, Louisiana Tech versus SMU. We are in a fight with SMU, but we're up. We go ahead, we score basically a game-winning touchdown. There's like 20 seconds left. I mean, we know they need a touchdown to win. We're all feeling great. Oh my goodness, we just beat SMU. We just came out of a dogfight where we should have beat Mississippi State the week before that or 2 weeks before that. We're feeling pretty good about how good we are. We just blew a lead against Mississippi State. By the way, ball gets up, no time on the clock. Our DB decided he was going to go and try to stat pad and get himself an interception. He goes up, misses the ball with his hands. It bounces off, bounces right up in the air, right into the hands of an SMU receiver. Game over. We lost on a Hail Mary. And the the feeling, I mean, it feels like a damn piano just got dropped on you. Like it is awful. Like we really lost that way. As a D lineman, you get more pissed off at your DBs because it's like we couldn't do anything about that. Really, honestly, like sure you can say, oh, we gotta get the QB, but I mean, bro, we're rushing three, and they're almost max prone right now, so it's gonna be tough. So for the Bears, I understand it, especially for the reason why it happened. The guy who was supposed to be attached to Noah Brown the entire way decided he was gonna turn around, talk shit to the fans, and the play starts, and he's still talking. Turns around, okay, play starting, whatever. They're just gonna throw it up and just go, do whatever. He jumps up, what I think is a little too early, and trying to catch it with one hand. Even if he didn't try to catch it with one hand, the angle that he had was all wrong. He jumped up too early, so he couldn't get his hand pointed down. Yeah, it's like volleyball. You got to get up at that right angle to spike it down instead of spiking it, you know, horizontally. Uh, Ball ends up popping up. Noah Brown, shout out with the awareness. He's right there. Jaden Daniels, give him, is there a way that Jaden Daniels can win MVP as a rookie? Because I'm be honest, outside of like really Lamar, or Josh Allen not throwing any picks, well, he threw his first one, but there's not really
And it wasn't
many
even
other
his fault
quarterbacks.
either.
Yeah, it wasn't even his fault. So I mean, there's not really many quarterbacks right now. And I'm like, okay, they're playing better than Jaden Daniels. Because I'm also looking at like Jaden Daniels has this team 6-2. this was a team that we were talking about, man. They'd be lucky to win 3 games, 6-2. So,
They've already beat their win total from last year, and they did that last week. Or they matched it last week, and they beat it this year.
and now everything after this is icing on the cake, and it's one of them situations where a young QB changed the trajectory. So this is the second year in a row we've seen that. Um, CJ Stroud with the Texans, which we'll get into later. But I mean, shout out to Jaden Daniels and shout out to what he's doing. I mean, because he's winning games and he's blowing people out. He's getting in dog fights and standing there, hanging in tough. I mean, this was an ugly game. It's a defensive game, you know, and they pulled it out. But really, I want to switch gears to Caleb Williams because thanks to Caleb Williams, I did take an L in fantasy because for some reason he just refuses to get the ball to DJ Moore, or he just refuses to accurately throw DJ Moore the ball. And I'm looking at Caleb Williams, and I believe he only completed like 10 passes, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't look good this game. Besides the fourth quarter, he stepped up, and I mean, props to him. He did step up on their last drive, go drive them down the field. But I mean, he didn't look good, and that offense is just concerning for him because for all the talk about it being a good situation, and it really is. I mean, he's on a good team with a great defense. He has a bunch of weapons. The offensive line is just so bad that he was under pressure the entire game against a defense that's not even that great.
And you see, these type of things confuse me as someone who's watching and someone who's involved in football because I feel like there are ways to fix this, but it's like I'm looking at a guy. I mean, if we're being honest, the way he played is pretty comparable to, Spencer Rattler last week. Like, what can he do? But I still feel like he was in a much better position. He has his 3 starting receivers and his tight end one. I mean, that is a much better position than what we gave Spencer Rattler last week. And you can even argue this week. So I'm concerned with him because I would have figured that this offense would have found a way by now. And if I'm not mistaken, their bye week was last week. So what the hell were you doing in the bye week? I will always be confused of how teams come out of a bye week looking like shit. Because not only looking like shit, but looking unprepared.
That's more of a coaching thing than a player thing.
Yeah, I mean, and so I'm looking at
Well,
this
I
like,
mean, Shane Waldron, their offensive coordinator, was at Seattle last year, and they didn't really have that great of an offense, and he got let go because they got a new staff coming in. So already that's on paper didn't seem like the greatest hire for your rookie quarterback to be getting a guy who was pretty much fired and wasn't that great the year before. But I mean, you're seeing the fruits of it a lot with the offense because there's just been so many times, and I know the past couple weeks before their bye, they looked like they're figuring it out a bit, but it was because they're playing the worst defenses in the league. I do want to give some credit to the Commanders' defense because at the beginning of the season, everyone thought they were one of the worst defenses, and they still aren't the greatest, but they've kind of stepped up a little bit recently, and I think a lot of that has to do with having Dan Quinn in there as the head coach and then just getting everyone to be bought in on defense and figuring things out. But Caleb Williams was pressured on 61% of his dropbacks in this game. Like, to be pressured that much, I mean, that's just, you're never going to have any success. It's just bad offensive line play and then not being able to scheme up anything to, like, get guys. I mean, I know the Commanders played really well on defense, but you got to just come up with something to be able to get the ball out of his hands quick, help him make some plays, and not fall into these terrible situations. And they just weren't able to do that. And, I mean, also, then you have a team that they get down to the goal line and they decide, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go hand the ball off to backup offensive linemen, and that's a good plan. And then they fumble. I mean, what do you expect is going to happen? I know Tony Romo on the broadcast, he brought up when the Bears did that with Refrigerator Perry in the Super Bowl. It was a complete blowout in that game when they did that, and they just did it to go get him a touchdown. They didn't do it in a close game where they're trying to win it and rely on him to be the guy to do it.
I mean, I looked at that play, and I love creative play calls. I love calls that are a little wacky. That kind of makes some sense. I'm not talking about what was it, a year ago in the Cowboys' last play they had, or 2 years ago they had Zeke be the goddamn center. I mean, that's too damn crazy. That don't make any type of sense. But this, I mean, hey, you can say what you want. Getting the fullback might be useful for teams if they want to do shit like that.
Well, you know what the
Because
crazy thing is? They cut their fullback before this week.
and imagine that they're gonna run a play basically for a fullback. And I understand, right? If your offensive lineman holds on to the ball there, there's not really any way that you stop him. I mean, I get it. Like I said, I'm not upset at the play call. I'm not even looking at that like that's just damn stupid. Because I get it. Understand the thought process, understand why you believed it worked. And as long as you have a good reason as to why it works, this isn't to me, that's not like offensive coordinators, which I hate this, by the way. I hate when offensive coordinators, you're down in a game and you decide to run the ball up the middle twice. I hate that shit beyond anything imaginable. I don't understand it. I think you're wasting downs and you're wasting everybody's time. And I feel like if any offensive coordinator does that, they should get fired immediately. If
Hey,
you if you run the ball,
Did y'all see the
what
play
play?
that the Panthers ran this week?
I ain't watching no Panthers game.
I was just say, I'll be honest, I haven't watched any Panthers because
Oh,
there's no value.
I didn't watch the game either. I just saw it on Twitter. They went 5 wide and ran all slants in the middle. They were all lined up in the middle of the field by the end of the play.
I mean, I did something like that in Madden a couple times because I want to put a lot of pressure on the middle linebacker if I feel like that middle linebacker is sitting there and they're running zones that's kind of hanging towards the outside.
And you
If
think
anyone,
Madden's football? Madden's not football. Come on.
no, but the same type of mindset is there. The systems are there. I mean, if you're lining up an outside leverage, then yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and throw some shit inside here. I mean, you're gonna give me that, and then especially if you only have like one actual linebacker or one middle linebacker sitting in the middle, yeah, I'm gonna go stress his ass out if he's playing his zone. Let me go ahead and send two routes his way. Figure it
But
out which one.
to send 5 his way and they all meet up in the middle at the same time, for the most part.
That's probably on the receivers. Though. They probably need to level that a little bit better. But I understand it. I mean, with 5 slants, somebody has to get open. Like that's. I mean, a slant route is probably one of the most high percentage pass that you can do outside of like that's moving forward outside of a just straight up, you know, curl or a bubble. Like
Well, nobody got open, but I mean that could be just a testament to the Panthers. But
that's probably a
it,
testament to the Panthers.
it just seemed like a very dumb play call.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it. I would expect something like that to happen.
Yeah, but no, going back to what you're saying, like, I get what you're saying. Creative play, like, if you think it can work, it can work. But also, you got to look at the flip side. Do you really want to rely on putting the ball in an offensive lineman's hands in that situation and relying on him? Like, clearly, they had an issue with the exchange there. So that's something that you have to worry about in those positions where it's a guy who's not used to going and taking a handoff, who's I don't know how much he's even practiced this play, to be honest, because it was a play designed for a fullback, and he ran it because he's the de facto fullback after they just cut their guy. So just the whole situation of it, if it's something that you have a guy that's been practicing this and then you just didn't execute it, that's one thing. But I don't know how much they've really run this with the personnel that they had there based off of them just cutting their fullback and him having to step into that role.
I mean, we all see it with these coaches. These coaches have a lot of ego and a lot of hubris, right? Like they they don't really think like we do. They don't think the way that you think, right? Where it's okay, well, we haven't practiced this much. It's no, these guys. my guys are coached well, I believe that they'll execute no matter what I ask them to do. I mean that is the biggest fallacy in all of fucking football as a coach. Believing that bullshit that your players are going to execute when it's time to execute. That's just not true. It doesn't happen. That never happens, really. I mean, outside of your big players. I mean, yeah, obviously, like people make big plays late game, but I mean, you're asking an offensive lineman. You have so much faith and ego that you're gonna sit here and say, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna trust an offensive lineman here to take this handoff and score this in here for us. I mean, that's like what? I mean, it like I said, it makes sense like the play structure and how it should end up. Like, yes, it makes sense. But I mean, just from a coaching perspective, I mean, this is not a safe call. It is risky. And you probably would have done better just putting DeAndre Swift right there. You know what I mean? And having him move that offensive lineman to where DeAndre Swift is, and then move DeAndre Swift to where the lineman is. And then, if anything, have the offensive lineman gain some steam and just run right into him, push him forward. I mean, that could work. So, and that's much safer. I'd believe in that a little more than the offensive lineman hold on to the ball. Um, but I mean, these coaches, they're always going to think what they're doing is right, and it just gets down to who has the least amount of ego, really, and can recognize, all right, this shit ain't going.
Yeah.
We've seen it a million times in the NFL where coach's ego gets the best of him. He's like, nope, this is what we're going to do. I believe in my players. Blah 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 blah
Well, we really
blah.
saw it
That's
come down to ego at the end of the game too, because Tyreek Stevenson deciding to taunt the fans instead of play football, and then ironically, if he had just stayed taunting, they probably would have won the game.
crazy how that works, huh?
That is crazy. I mean, that's just a mess. I mean, I know we talked about it earlier, but everything that you could do wrong on that play, they did wrong. I mean, not having anyone back to cover the ball being tipped, tipping the ball up like that, taunting the fans, just allowing them to get to that situation in the first place because they allowed like almost 15 yards on the last play on just the easiest quick out ever. Because, I mean, you knew they weren't going to go Hail Mary that play before. And I hate it when teams play that far off in a situation where it can't be a Hail Mary because it's just way beyond any reasonable range, but they're still playing back like they want to defend that, and then they allow them to get in the range to have a chance. But, I mean, I guess everything evened out in that game because the Commanders really deserved to win that game. The Bears' defense put up an admirable performance keeping them out of the end zone, but I think the Commanders were the better team, and I guess the better team ended up winning.
True. I can rock with that. I can rock with that statement. What game's next?
What game? I think with how much
Well,
we've talked about these
I know.
teams this season, I think we got to get into the Eagles Bengals because these have been two teams and two head coaches in particular that we've talked about a lot this season. And I first want to say that I will give the Eagles some flowers. I know that they beat a bad team this week, but they actually looked like a really good team. Their passing game was clicking, and it was clicking efficiently, with Jalen Hurts going 16 for 20. Saquon's obviously going to run the ball well. Their defense seems like it's starting to gel. And this is a team that they beat a bad team this week, so you do have to take it with a grain of salt. But they look like they're getting things together, and they look like they are definitely trending upwards.
Well, I mean, once again, I think this might be a Saints Cowboys situation where we just probably just beat a bad team. The Eagles probably beat a bad team, like you said. Um, Joe Burrow didn't look particularly great. Um, I mean, T. Higgins, gets hurt Friday practice. I mean, how many times we've seen that shit this year? Friday practice just killing guys. Um,
which is supposed to be the easiest practice.
Supposed to be the easiest practice. Supposed to be a walkthrough day. It seems like they're not walking through, and it's a quad injury, so it's like, mm, it's just frustrating. Um, and then man, I'm I'm glad I'm not a Saquon fantasy owner. Well, I am in one of my teams, but I mean that team's so stacked, I really don't care. I mean, three push touchdowns for Jalen Hurts. I mean, we gotta separate those stats. Those can't be deemed as rushing stats. They can't be. We gotta change that because they gonna fuck around and have him break all types of damn records and
Well, he
overtime.
already
People
is. I
gonna
mean,
be
they showed that he's, I think, is like second or something, like, in touchdowns for the Eagles. Because, I mean, it's crazy, but hey, I'll take it. I have him on my fantasy team.
I tried getting him, but guy didn't really want to. He didn't want to trade Kyler Murray straight up for him. I get it. At the time he was struggling. Jalen Hurts was struggling, so I was trying to get him for cheap. But um, I mean, we'll see. We'll see with the Eagles next week. Um, I don't know who they play next week, but I mean, I think this falls in line with Zach Taylor needs to be fired. Like
100%.
yes,
And I mean, anyone who's watched us at all this season in these recaps, you know what our thoughts are on Zach Taylor. So I'm going to wait a second to get into that. Because I do want to give the Eagles some props for a few things. Because, yes, like you said, could just be beaten up on a bad team. But there were a few things in particular that stood out from this game. I think the one thing that stood out a lot was their defense. Hasn't been the greatest this year, and I know the Bengals' offense has been disappointing, but you had a lot of moments where you see signs of life with this team. You had a few great individual plays to break up passes, especially on that deep ball to Jamar Chase, being able to tip that up and then have it get picked off by Gardner Johnson. You had another moment where the um, Eagles are bringing a blitz, and then I believe it was Blankenship back at safety, knew where the ball probably would have to go, and is able to just go beeline over there and be in position to deliver a big hit, knock the ball out, force an incompletion. And then you have Cooper DeJean looking a bit better as a young guy. You starting to see signs of a defense that's gelling and young guys that are really starting to figure out their role, figure out their place in the defense. So I think that's something that really helps. The one thing I want to say about their offense, it looked great, but how much of it was going against the Bengals defense, which is terrible. Because the biggest thing with Jalen Hurts is he's not the quickest guy through his progressions, but when he's able to have time and go through his progressions, he's able to have games like this. The Bengals got no pressure on him, so he's able to go through his progressions and then make good reads and good decisions. The times that he struggles is whenever he's sped up, he's put under pressure, and he doesn't have time to get from his second to third read maybe because he doesn't go through it as quickly or whatever, and he's being sped up. That's when he normally runs into issues. They're able to give him clean pockets, some good situations, and he looked good. He is making good decisions. Defense stepped up, so I think there is some positive takeaways that you can take from this game beyond just them beating a bad team, and also just the fact that they beat up on this team instead of being in a close game. So shout out to them.
hey man, it's very important. I always say, if you want to be a good team, a good way to show it is to handle business against bad teams. If you don't handle business against bad teams, I can't look at you as a good team. And we've already mentioned, right, with the Eagles, they're a talented team. Like on paper, they should be good. Like no one is surprised if they win because they should win. But their coaching kind of holds them back a little bit. This is one of the teams that coaching holds them back. But they handle business, so shout out to them. And then Bengals, I mean, it's Make the call. Make the call. Get rid of your coach. It's time. Um, Anything else you want to talk about from that game?
I mean, I have a little bit I want to get into on the Bengals, unsurprisingly.
Go
But
ahead.
before I say it, Preston, do you have anything you want to say on this?
Preston's gone, man.
Preston's going. Dang, he didn't even say he was leaving. But all right, the Bengals. I mean, where do you even start with this team? Because this is a team that is supposed to be a contender. This is a team that is supposed to be one of the best teams in the AFC, and they very clearly are not. A lot of people have been giving them the benefit of the doubt for this season, saying, well, look at all the talent they have. I mean, surely they got to get things together on offense. Surely they got to figure it out because there's just too much talent there, and they've done it in the past. Well, guess what? We're sitting here at 3-5, looking completely uncompetitive in the second half. This is not a team that deserves the benefit of the doubt. This is not a team that can easily turn it around quickly. And I think people are kind of starting to see that they are not a good team. Their defense is awful. Like, it is solidly a bottom 5 defense in the league. I mean, they are just terrible. They get no pressure at all. If Trey Hendrickson gets blocked, nobody else is going to win because they have nobody else there. And they've just bled out all of their talent on defense throughout the years by just letting guys walk, not re-signing guys, being fully focused on their offense. And they're facing the fruit of it now. They don't have the talent to match up, and they also are a more expensive team now because all their cheap contracts on offense are now getting paid, so they're not going to be able to just go splurge out tons of money to save this defense. And then offensively, T. Higgins being out, I mean, that's a big loss, so it should hurt your team. It shouldn't hurt your team this much, though, because you should have something schemed up to be able to get guys open. But no, all this Bengals offense does is they have routes outside the numbers, completely isolated. They don't do much levels or any kind of concepts where you can have multiple guys working in tandem to beat the defense. It's all isolated routes, mostly outside the numbers, and then just praying you can hit on a deep shot to Jamar Chase every once in a while to go move the ball, or praying that Chase Brown is able to get outside and get off in a big run despite playing behind a terrible offensive line. There's just no creativity to this offense. It's just the most vanilla, boring, like, you know what's coming. There's like no threat that you really need to stop because if you just defend very certain things, they aren't going to do stuff. And I mean, Burrow, he actually looked really good in the first half and was able to move the ball pretty well. But second half, the defense is able to adjust on them, and Zach Taylor doesn't adjust things back. This is just a bad team with a bad head coach, and the only saving grace that they have right now is that the AFC is so bad that they could backdoor themselves into the playoffs, but do you even want to at this point? I mean, unless, obviously, if you can make the playoffs, you want to have a chance at that and have a chance to win games, but unless you can turn things around and actually show that you can be a good team, I don't really know what the upside on this team is, especially with, I mean, offensively, there's ways they could figure it out if they can call stuff better, but defensively, they just don't have the talent. Like, they don't have any exciting young players. I mean, Cam Taylor-Britt is probably their best young player, you could say, and he gets benched at times. It's just a bad team, bad situation, mismanagement, and I mean, I guess you can just say the Bengals are just the Bengals. They haven't been a good franchise for a lot of their history, and they've kind of returned to that now.
Hey man, I got nothing else to add on that. I think you hit that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, really, you got to toy with the idea of, trading someone like T. Higgins. Um, I just don't see how you're going to pay 2 receivers, pay your quarterback, and then have to try to figure out the entire defense. I don't think that's just realistic. And I know for damn sure he's not going to go for another franchise tag. So
Oh, no, and it's a terrible model spending all that money on quarterback and 1 receiver, let alone 2 receivers. As we've discussed, and we're going to be getting into plenty more, I'm sure, on this channel, That model is not successful for teams because it just leaves too many holes. And there are ways that you can get it done if you do it like the Lions, where you build the core first, then you bring in the cheap receiver in Amon-Ra, and you get all that core clicking. And then by the time you have to extend everyone, you're already in your contending window, and you're able to set up the extensions to kick in at a point where you define a clear window before then that you can spend money. But the Bengals did not do that effectively, and they have passed their window now with all extensions kicking in or having to kick in if they want to keep guys like go pay T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. He's going to get paid. It's just a bad situation for a franchise to be in, and it's just mismanagement on their part. And, funnily enough, I think the thing that was the worst thing for them was making the Super Bowl, because obviously you want to make the Super Bowl, and they could have won that game. So why would you be complaining about that? Well, because they made that Super Bowl, they got stuck with Zach Taylor. And obviously, if you can do it over every single time, you'd say, yes, we want to make that Super Bowl. We want to have that chance to win. And I'm not knocking them for that. It just sucks that because of that, they got stuck with Zach Taylor, who before that season, fans were already kind of out on. They go on that improbable run, and then afterwards, they're able to get back almost to that point, but then they just seem to keep getting worse every year, and the same issues arise every single year. And that is the biggest sign of a coach doing a bad job, when you have the same problems every year that are fixable. And for the Bengals, the main thing is starting the season off every single year completely unprepared, just looking like, what do they do in the offseason? Because they go lose week 1 to the Patriots this year. They go lose week 2. They are like 2-10 or something just terrible under Zach Taylor's tenure in week 1 and 2. And that's something that you should be able to fix. And look, you're not going to win every game at the beginning of the season, but you should be able to do better, especially against bad teams. And that comes back to coaching. The team was not prepared properly to play. And, this is the fruits of the labor of having a poorly coached team with a poorly constructed roster now on defense. So here we are.
Their team, I can't say that. Never mind. I can't say that. Move on. Next team. Who's next on the list?
Well, let's keep it in the division. We've got to talk about Ravens-Browns, which, is not something that you thought you'd be talking about probably before the game started, but Jameis Winston, what a day he had. 334 yards, 3 touchdowns. He should have been picked off probably a couple times, but he wasn't. 0 picks, and instead, because the Ravens can't catch a football on defense, he's able to throw that bomb to Cedric Tillman to give them the lead and win the game.
That's just the Jameis way, ain't it? Unwavering faith. I'm going to throw this bitch. And if it's picked, it's picked. But I'm going to keep on throwing it. He's like, who was it said that? Deion Waiters? He was like, I'd rather go 0 for 22 than 0 for 10, because at least I know I'm still shooting it. That's Jameis right there. And shame on me. I started the Ravens defense. I usually pick a defense week to week. I'm not really going to draft one if it doesn't fall to me. But I thought, hey, the Browns are bad. I started the Bengals defense against the Browns last week, and they got me 15 points.
And that's the Bengals defense too.
Yeah, and that's the Bengals defense. So I'm like, all right, if the Bengals defense is scoring 15 on the Cleveland Browns, what is the Ravens defense going to do against the Cleveland Browns? 0 points. And that's what they did. Man, that's just any given Sunday right there. And shout out to Jameis,
but I think
man.
that is actually a good time to bring up the point about the Ravens defense, because as much hype as they might receive, and as much as at times they do look like they are a good defense, they are last in the league in most pass defense stats. Like, I didn't even realize that they were that bad, but they are like legitimately in a lot of stats the worst pass defense in the league. And you go up against a quarterback that can sling it a little bit like Jameis, and it'll show because this Browns team. I mean, it's a divisional game, and everyone knows how those AFC North games go. It doesn't matter what your record is; it's going to be a competitive game, and any team in that division can beat any team at any given point, as we just saw. But I mean, obviously, if Deshaun's playing, this is probably a pretty easy win for the Ravens, even given that. But Jameis comes in. He's not afraid to swing the ball, like you say, and he's going up against a secondary that has struggled a lot this season. And the result that you get is like just him going off and the Ravens just not being able to do anything defensively. And that's something that they need to address because if they want to be a contender, and I know before this week, with how well they've been playing recently, there's a lot of talk about are they the best team in the league? Well, I think you definitely have to knock them down a peg now because there is the clear weakness that has been exposed in this team, and it is their pass defense. Offensively, I mean, Lamar had a good game. Derrick Henry, he played well, even though he didn't get that much volume, surprisingly. But, I mean, they just couldn't get it done because their defense. And that is something that, I mean, I don't really know like how I'm just kind of talking in circles here, but it's something that they need to address because you can't have the worst defense in the league and be a contender, obviously, or pass defense at least.
And it's just funny how NFL teams are, because at least from my knowledge, their defense is about the same as last year in terms of personnel. Um, it's just so crazy how 1 year can just make that much of a difference.
Now they did
Because
lose their DC.
they did lose their DC, but still about the same personnel. And I mean, if this is a drop off that you get, I mean, I don't see how your DC stays another year. I mean, you have the same players basically, but your production is much, 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 much worse. Towards bottom of the league. I mean, you don't keep your DC after that. You don't. And I'm all for coordinators being one and done because if we're bringing back the same team, then if I'm bringing back the same team and a guy leaves and then the next guy comes in is worse, yeah, no, you're not gonna stay. You're not gonna be here. Um, but I mean, gotta give it to the Browns too, 'cause I mean, the Browns they fought, man, the whole game. And I guess it's a divisional thing, but I mean, once again, I'm just going to see. I just keep shouting out James, man. I love Jameis as a person, and I think he's a fun quarterback to watch. Um, and this once again goes into my question of Kevin Stefanski. Why the hell was he not starting before? I feel like the Browns would probably have 2 or 3 more wins if Jameis is starting or if Jameis is playing instead of Deshaun Watson. And then that just also begs the question: how bad is Deshaun Watson really? Like, what is going on with him? Like, is his progressions too slow? Is he just not seeing the field? I mean, is he just mentally cooked as a quarterback to where he can't do it anymore mentally? He's not there anymore. He's been beaten up too much mentally, physically. He's a shell of his former self. Um, and I'm going to look at Jameis. Jameis is also unlocking Cedric Tillman. Um,
Shout
who's
out
a
Cedric Tillman.
shout out Cedric Tillman. That's the waiver wire pickup of the week. I
He
mean,
is, unless you're in any of my leagues where I already picked him up. So shout out to that. I will
don't be in
claim that
Dave
one
leagues.
because I had him on my dynasty team and I'd been holding on to him. And when he finally went off 2 weeks ago, said, "This might be the moment. Let's go for it." So shout out Cedric Tillman.
And I hope you're starting him from here on out. Maybe. Mm,
Well, with how
I
beat
don't
up
know.
my receiving core is, there is no choice to start him. So please keep performing.
um, but yeah, I mean, See, here we go. Calvin drinking game. Bring up the Saints. This is the type of shit that I'm talking about in this league. Um, say what you want about Jameis, but in my eyes, he was the most successful quarterback that the Saints have started since Drew Brees left. Honestly, um, fortunately, he goes down with injury, and then I think the broadcast, whoever was broadcasting the Browns game, they mentioned that Jameis lost his spot with the Saints because of interceptions. No, hell no, that wasn't why. He lost because the coaching staff is inept, and they would rather Andy Dalton, the as Dennis Allen puts it. What do you call him? He said something like a smooth or a cautious wave. I don't know, some
I
shit
don't
like
know.
that, something stupid.
Some Dennis Allen shit.
Yeah, some Dennis Allen shit, and uh, he just kind of got his job taken for really no particular reason. I mean, Andy Dalton, the biggest dirty Mac in the league. I mean, he had a good game. When Jameis was down, they were like, "Oh yeah, we're just gonna keep him here." Um, so it wasn't because of turnovers, because he got hurt and they just didn't want to give him his job back. But my biggest argument as to why the Saints should have always kept Jameis was because Jameis is going to be cheap, and for a team like the Saints, who they just need to go cheap and yet still compete because of the cap that's just going to just keep barreling down on them from years to come until they finally decide to stop doing that shit. I mean, I believe that you're going to get the same production, the same production that we're getting from Spencer Rattler, Jake Hayner, Derek Carr, Ian Book, all these fucking guys that we've seen, Andy Dalton, Trevor Simeon. I mean, the offense has looked the same in a lot of games, no matter who's back there at QB. I mean, you can go ahead and get the same production that you're getting out of fucking Derek Carr, out of Jameis Winston. And sure, Jameis probably gonna turn the ball over more. I think that's fair to say. But we're also not paying him $100 million, and that money could be utilized in a lot of different places. You know, maybe you could have went go get Devon. Nope, you don't want to get Devontae Adams. That's not working out too well for the Jets. But I mean, you could just get younger. Um,
Just get
so
better.
shout out to Jameis, man. That's unwavering faith. I hope he gets signed to a long term deal, and I hope he becomes the permanent starter for the Browns for years to come, and
Well,
finally finds a home.
I hope so too, because that means it all worked out for him. But this is just a 1 week sample size, so we'll see how he does next week against a bit better of a defense in the Chargers. But I mean, look, it's showing life to the team, and like you said, you don't know why. Like, it doesn't make any sense why he wouldn't have started sooner. At least try him, except for the fact that I think this is just a team that knows they messed up with Deshaun, knows that they just have a valueless asset that's being paid tons of money. And I think they were just hoping and praying that they could just get something out of him and just have him show something. Because, I mean, now you have the most expensive backup in NFL history if Jameis becomes the starter. And you don't really have any easy way to move on from him because you gave him a fully guaranteed contract. So, I mean, shout out the Browns for doing that and giving him the stupid contract. And shout out the Bills. So I think that they might be the best team in the AFC now. I mean, obviously you have the Chiefs still sitting there undefeated, but the Bills, I mean, this offense looks like they have it all together, and they've really figured out an identity.
Man, I can agree with that. I can. Um, I was gonna go and do the dream game. I ain't gonna do that. I ain't gonna do that. I ain't gonna do it. I do it way too much. I'll save those thoughts for whenever we talk about the Saints. Um, which can we talk about the Saints?
I mean, do we even want to talk about the Saints? Because what else is there to
Yeah,
say
we
at
want
this
to talk
point?
about the Saints. I got like
We could
maybe
talk
20
about them.
minutes left.
But let's
So we can fire, rapid fire until we get to
Well,
them.
let's get. I'll go into the Bills. Who would have thought that trading for Amari Cooper would completely turn around your offense, and it would have nothing to do with Amari Cooper? Because he has one reception for 3 yards this game, and the passing game has, I would say, one of their best games of the season. And it's kind of like statistically, Allen only had 283 yards and 2 touchdowns. I say only, like, that's a good stat line, but it's not like he had some 400-yard game that I'm saying is their best passing game, but they didn't really need to because they threw the ball out, they got up on them early, and they were able to just pound it after that and just run the clock, dominate the game. But the reason that I say Amari Cooper has really turned around this offense, even if he's not putting up the production yet, is Keon Coleman, especially. Before Amari Cooper got there, Keon Coleman was just being asked to be an outside the numbers X receiver and then to go win routes down the field, win contested balls. Now that, and he's still able to do some of that, especially in the red zone. But now that they have Amari Cooper in there and the receiving core is kind of beefed up a bit, the roles have kind of shifted to where they're using guys more interchangeably. They're using Keon Coleman especially. He's getting use in a variety of roles in a variety of routes across the field. And the result that you're seeing is he's had 2 very good games the past 2 weeks, and he's able to show he can do more than just that role that he was supposed to do before. And I think that's a really great thing to do with the rookie receiver is put him in different roles, let him do different things, let him learn how to do different things, develop in different ways, and kind of show you what he's able to do instead of you telling him what you want him to do.
And I was gonna say the biggest thing with Mark Cooper is that you unlock Keon Coleman, and this is why I'm a big believer in having multiple receivers. I don't understand the teams, like the Saints, who just believe that they could just get by with one really good receiver and then fill him out the rest with bullshit. I mean, look, Rashish, he's not bullshit, but he's definitely not playing the way that he should be getting played because we don't have any other receivers that can do it. So everybody's kind of forced to play something that they're not. I mean, we're asking fucking Rashish Shaheed to take big hits up the middle. I mean, can we stop doing that shit? Okay, let me stop talking about the Saints again. But anyway, uh, teams that go and invest in the wide receiver room, it pays dividends. It does. Um, you remember the Steelers back then, AB and Juju, and that was pretty good. Look at the Bucks. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. They are always going to have a good receiving core, and they got Kate Otten. Had Gronk. Like they invest in pass catchers, and this just goes into our argument that we always say every week, right? Surround your quarterback with pieces. Surround him. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, but shout out to Josh Allen. Um, who's a new OC? Joe Brady. Um, Shout out to him too, because I didn't think the Joe Brady offense was going to work out this well, honestly. But maybe that's just because it was tainted because of the stint with the Panthers, which that's a career killer going there. But I mean, he has Josh Allen being efficient, yet they're not relying on him as much, and the team is better for it. I mean, James Cook is having a great year. You go and trade for Amari Cooper. And Amari Cooper, because look, players are going to respect players. Teams are going to respect players. You have Amari Cooper, they're going to go ahead and send some people to Amari Cooper. That frees up a lot of other people. Um, Kind of like the Jets, right? Garrett Wilson, I feel like, is playing a little bit better now that Devontae Adams is here. I mean, he was already getting force fed the ball, but I just feel like that offense should, in theory, be able to work better because Devontae Adams is taking up space on defense.
Yeah,
So
and then you don't have the number one corner. Always, I mean, Garrett Wilson probably will have the number one corner on him most of the time, but you could have situations where that corner might not travel with him the whole game. And then for the Bills, for Keon Coleman, he's not going to have all the attention that he was having before because you have to worry about Amari Cooper as a receiving threat. So it's good roster building, like you said, to have multiple options and to have different skill sets too. Because, like you're saying with the Saints with Shaheed, he's a great player. He's an explosive player. He shouldn't be your number two receiver and having to run all of those kinds of routes where you're having him run routes to move the chains and make contested catches. You want to use him in what he's best at. And for Keon Coleman, you're getting to see that he's not just good at, like, it's kind of the inverse to where he's not just a outside the numbers X receiver. He's able to work the middle, work other spaces too, and he's being allowed to do that. He's not having to face the number one corner every time. So good for him. Shout out the Bills and shout out their defense too, because that's a run defense especially that really seems to just be locked in. I know the Seahawks don't have an offensive line, but they had a 14.3% offensive rushing success rate in that past game. I mean, that's a testament to the Seahawks offensive line being terrible and not even being able to allow Kenneth Walker, who is a great running back, to do anything. 9 carries for 12 yards for him, 3 carries for 4 yards for Charbonnet. And I mean, that's a Bills defense that they are just all bought in. You have corner, and this is a really great sign about how bought in they are when you see their corners are willing to step up and make tackles and go put down hits on running backs and whoever. They've got just as a unit, they've seemed cohesive. They seem like they're kind of coming together, and as long as they can stay healthy, because they have dealt with some injuries, especially in past seasons, you see defense lots of times will get injured and fall apart a bit for the Bills. If they stay healthy, I think that's a good unit that they have out there. Offensive line was able to impose their will on, again, Seahawks. Not a dominant defensive line, but they're able to impose their will on them anyway. Run the ball at ease, keep the pocket clean for Allen, and it's just all 3 phases, really, a good game for the Bills.
shout out to the Bills, man. As far as the Seahawks, that team does confuse me. I mean, I don't really know how to really evaluate the Seahawks. I mean, they're like a team to me that's like the epitome of, I don't know, just there, just good. Like there's nothing more to say about them than they're good. I don't really see them beating contending teams. Man, I don't see them losing against teams with losing records. You know, their flaws pop out every now and then. I don't think DK played this game, huh?
He did not. He is hurt.
Yeah, so I guess DK means a little bit more to the offense than we give him credit for. Um, and I don't really understand offenses with running backs like Kenneth Walker or Jonathan Taylor or Derrick Henry, uh, guys who are seen as bell cows. They don't ever really include them in the rank. Now, Kenneth Walker, I think, has had like the most targets he's had like in his career so far. I mean, I'm just making that shit up. But I know there was one game he had like 7 catches for like 20 yards. But I appreciate that effort because I do believe in giving the ball to your back in the passing game. And I think even with the Ravens, I think they can open up their offense a lot more if they run. I don't know if they can run screens with Derrick Henry because they're probably just going to key in on that. But give the ball to your running back. Run some Texas routes, some angles, some wheels, whatever. Like give these guys the ball, man. You can't tell me that these guys are that bad at catching the ball. It's where you just want to lock them into a purely rush only role. You know. Um, so maybe I'll say that for them to get Kenneth Walker more involved because you need to get Kenneth Walker involved. Seahawks need to get him going if they want to win. I mean, they usually win whenever he has a lot of yards and a lot of touches. So give him the ball. But that's all I have to say about the Seahawks.
Well, you know what? One of the biggest takeaways from this game is the
Is
Cardinals are now at the top of the division because the
crazy numbers, huh?
Cardinals go and beat the Dolphins, who, although they have not been a good team, they did have Tua back. And this was supposed to be the start of their turnaround. Instead, you have an absolute masterclass by Kyler Murray, who had one of the best games that we've seen from him recently. And you have the Cardinals going and topping the division, which I'm sure. I mean, I know before the season started, there were a lot of people that said that they're a bit of a sleeper team in that division because Kyler being back healthy, you now give him Marvin Harrison. You still have Trey McBride. You still got Michael Wilson. You still got whoever else on your weapons, and then of course you have James Conner there. So you think, all right, well maybe that's an offense that can do something. But their defense, if they can be at all decent, then maybe it can be a good team. Well, their defense hasn't been at all decent, but still, they sit here now at 4-4, make it back to 500. Kyler Murray, he was just fun to watch. He was making some really great plays, really great throws, and this was despite Black Ops 6 coming out. So maybe if you are a COD fan, maybe this is a sign that this is the worst Call of Duty of all time because Kyler Murray was not playing it instead of preparing for this game. So maybe a little bit of concern for any Call of Duty fans here. But for Kyler, he had a great game.
Or you can flip it. This is the best Call of Duty game that is released recently, which is why he is producing. I mean, Modern Warfare 3 sucked ass, and he sucked ass when he played it. So, there's arguments to be had there. There is. But Kyler has picked it up over the last couple weeks. Um, I had him as a guy who can be in the MVP race. Man, maybe I was wrong on that. Maybe I was just jumping the gun on that. But I mean, when he's playing well, they're winning. Uh, and I think their offense needs to. I think their offense needs to flip a little bit. I don't think they need to be targeting Marvin Harrison as much as they do because we're starting to find out some things about him. And I just like the way the offense moves better whenever James Conner and Kyler Murray are just being a 1-2 duo with Marvin being a very nice compliment. So, I mean, maybe they continue that. I mean, and as far as their defense, I mean, look, we know their defense isn't good, but their defense is playing fucking hard, you know? And that's all you can really ask for. They're playing hard, they're trying, they're flying around. And look, pursuit is the ultimate eraser of all things. And so is effort. Having great effort will erase a lot of the fucking mistakes that will pop up. And they're playing with effort. And the Cardinals are fighting, which is why they're top of the division. Which is crazy to say. But also, man, that's a division right there that is just in all types of fucked up situations. And then you kind of look at it like, man, I don't know who the hell gonna come out in that division. I mean, we have an idea of who should, but it's just not working out that way.
I want to flip this back to the Dolphins for a second. Are they finished?
Uh, no. But I'm watching that team, and this team does not look anything like the offense we've seen last year. I'm pretty sure their OC is still there. Obviously, McDaniels is still there. But I'm looking at like Jalen Waddle's numbers. And I mean, this fucking guy is putting up no stats. Basically, he's putting up like Gabe Davis numbers right now. That's awful. I mean, this is a guy who, I mean, he had what 1,000 yards last year and the year before that. I mean, they're not giving the ball, and then with Tyreek, same situation. There is no reason as to why Tyreek is averaging as little numbers as he is. I mean, the guy almost had 2,000 yards last year. It was broke a record, and he's on pace for like, well, I don't know where. I think he's less than 1,000 right
I
now on
mean, to
pace.
be fair on these stats, you have to keep in mind the quarterback play that they've had.
Sure, but I'm always gonna look at like I understand the quarterback play argument, but I also don't at the same time because these quarterbacks aren't stupid. They know who their guy is. Hey, get in the game. You throw to this guy. It's Tyreek fucking Hill. Throw it to him, and they don't. Don't even look his way. So I don't understand it, and I don't understand why the coaches don't pull these guys aside and say, "Look, can you just fucking get the ball to him? I mean, he's open. We got the guy in the press box. He's saying, look, he's open almost every play. Give it to him." And even with Tua coming back, I mean, I just didn't really see it. And I don't think people are locking down Tyreek that much. At least not to the point. I mean, if they are, then you should look at Jalen Waddle, and he's not doing anything. I mean, Jonnu Smith is like your best receiver right now. That's absurd. So, and their defense, I mean, that leaves a lot to be desired. Um, so are they finished? Probably. I mean, I think they had a really good Cinderella run last year. I think a lot of people gave them, I guess, more than what we should have. I mean, I was a big believer in this team. I was a big believer in the Lions and the Dolphins. I liked what they were doing. I liked the moves they were making. And here we are. The Lions are trending upwards still, and look at the damn Dolphins going down.
Well, I think the defense really is the big point because offensively, they look bad. They like you said, they're not using their weapons like they should be, and all that stuff. But at the same time, that's something that they could figure out. They could figure out ways to get Tyreek the ball again, especially with Tua back. And also Waddle, he hasn't really done much, but they can scheme him some stuff probably. If they don't, then that's a problem. But I mean, and on the flip side, you could also say A-Chain, they've just turned him into like one of the best receiving backs in the league, which he wasn't at all last year. Whenever Tua's there, he just gets so many passes and he makes some plays. So they've got a little something with him, but they're also 2-5. They are pretty much out of their division race unless the Bills collapse. So wild card, like we said, it is wide open, but the margin for error is very, very slim now. And then if you look at the future, so let's say this year's not their year, losing too early hurt them. They just got in too big of a hole. Well, next year you have Tyreek Hill being a year older. You have Teron Armstead being a year older. You have Jalen Ramsey being a year older. You have all these guys throughout your roster just aging because they have an old roster. Like, sure, you have Achane and Waddle as young guys there, but you've got a lot of old guys on the roster. They've got a defense that isn't very good to begin with and has some aging pieces. And this is a team that has a lot of holes, but also has a lot of its money invested already. Because they have a lot of money invested in Tua, a lot of money invested in Tyreek. They have some money invested in Waddle, and it's one of those situations where once you set that model, if you don't get your contending window right and you're not able to make your push, once all those extensions kick in, it becomes harder to fill out the rest of the pieces, especially when you're a team like we see with the Bengals. If you have a bad defense and you've already are spending a lot of money, it's hard to completely rebuild it instead of just being in a position where you could add one or two pieces to go bolster a decent defense into being a good one. So for the Dolphins, their margin for error is very slim the next 2 years because if they're not able to win it in that window, they're going to lose a lot of pieces to age. And that defense needs to figure something out fast. And also, this is early in the season. We still need to see the Dolphins be a team that can win games late in the season, which they've struggled to do. So digging themselves into this hole early, it's going to be interesting to see, are they able to climb out of it with how they tend to fall off later in the season.
Don't pay your fucking quarterback $300 million. I think that also is a great start. So, hopefully teams will learn the lesson. Um, who's next? We got to rapid fire this shit now.
Well, before
Um,
we get into that, I actually just saw something that I kind of want to get into. So, Todd McShay, there's a tweet that came out that he is convinced that Shadir Sanders will block being drafted by the Panthers next year. Now, first of
sure.
all, I don't think that the Panthers would be drafting Shadir Sanders because if they, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they would, but I don't think that he has really shown that he is worthy of being that number one quarterback in the class, especially in a sense of skill set translating to the NFL. But here we go. We have Shadir Sanders. Now, this is not Shadir coming out and saying this is just Todd McShay being convinced that this would happen. But we have Shadir Sanders potentially pulling an Eli Manning and saying he won't go to a team.
I like it. I mean, until a team shows that they're serious and can actually make decisions to help me out as a rookie, no, I'm not going because I'm not finna have my career essentially ruined because you're asking me to do impossible tasks to help you out and you're not helping me out. I mean, it's like I said, what they did to Bryce Young's a slap in the face. I mean, they had nothing. They traded away everything they had. They got rid of DJ Moore for Bryce Young, mind you, and they got rid of CMC, years prior. So there's nothing there. I mean, you got Chuba Hubbard, but they signed Miles Sanders for some fucking reason, and they're not really playing Chuba Hubbard at the time, like now they are. But they did nothing to help out Bryce. They said, "Hey, you have a very shit O line. We'll sign you a 30-something-year-old Adam Thielen, and we'll give you fucking Terrence Marshall, and we'll draft Xavier Legette. Have fun. Win games. Oh, and by the way, you have no defense either. Go win games. If you don't, we'll bench you. I don't want to go there. Hell no. I mean, they haven't done anything to prove that they can make informed decisions on how to help out their quarterback or to help their team. Nah, I don't want to go there. So yeah, if I'm Shadur, and I know it's not really gonna be Shadur, it's gonna be Dion. Dion's like, no, we're not. No, he's not going to Carolina. He's not. No. Um. So I'm cool with it, man. I am. Um. There is another thing that popped up. Um. I'm a Josh Downs believer, but Josh Downs does not play well when Anthony Richardson's in the game. And Anthony Richardson has now been benched for Joe Flacco, which is very smart by the coach. Joe Flacco gives you the best chance of winning right now, much like how Jameis gives you the best chance of winning for the Browns over Deshaun Watson. Anthony Richardson's just fucking ass. I'm sorry. I mean, I had so much belief in him that maybe his athleticism will fucking help him out so much, but goddamn, no. I mean, he is awful.
Well,
Um,
he's one of those tools quarterbacks where he has all the physical tools to be a great quarterback, but he's never actually been a great quarterback. Now, he is like on the extreme end of that spectrum to where he is like generationally blessed physically, but also never done any, like, he had some flashes in college, but he was never consistently a good quarterback. So I think it's interesting. I mean, I think this is 100% the right move because the Colts are a team that definitely could at least be in the wild card race. Joe Flacco has had that team playing well, and I think for Anthony Richardson, this is the best way that he can develop because clearly being thrown out there in games isn't working for him. He has a lot that he needs to work on just a whole different level before he even gets to the games. Because, I mean, his completion percentage should just be indicative. He doesn't complete passes, and he is a quarterback. His job is to complete passes. So maybe getting some time to just sit and learn, kind of like Jordan Love did, maybe that'll help him out. But either way, it's the right move for them. Going back to Shadur quickly, though, I think that this is a very interesting discussion that you brought up because while Shadur may not be the greatest example of it, because I don't think that he is a number one overall player right now, he hasn't really shown that. And I mean, not that this matters, but you see all the replies as they're saying, like, good thing he's not getting drafted by them anyway, or like Panthers fans saying that they don't want him. Whether or not they want him doesn't matter. Like, if he's the best player in the draft, he would be drafted by them. But the I don't think he's that. But the situation that you said, the Panthers have shown that they are a terrible franchise. They don't build around their quarterbacks. Look what they just did to Bryce Young. No young guy would want to go there. And if you look at this draft right now, you have a situation where number one pick is projected to be the Panthers. That's a terrible situation for a quarterback to go into. Number two is the Patriots. They're not drafting a quarterback, but they drafted one last year. Terrible situation for a quarterback. And Drake May, he goes and he gets, I think he was concussed in the last game, just getting beat up playing behind that O line. Number three pick, projected to be the Titans right now. Another terrible situation. And they have a quarterback who they didn't spend high draft capital on because he was a second round pick in Levis, so you get a pass there, but he looks bad. The situation looks bad. You've got no weapons. You've got O-line not playing well. You've got Tony Pollard, and that's it. You've got Tajay Spears could be good if they used him more, but beyond that, it's just a lot of the top three picks once again. You see, they're all terrible situations, and two of those three are teams that would probably look quarterbacks normally. This year, it's a bit different with the quarterback class being very weak, and Cam Ward really right now being the only guy projected to be a top five guy. So you might actually see this year some teams kind of try and build around their quarterback more instead of just drafting a guy and hoping he can be a hero. But either way, you're seeing the fruits of being a team that the Panthers, they go trade everything to get Bryce Young, and they have the number one pick now back-to-back years. I know the Bears got their pick last year, but the worst team in the league back-to-back years. Patriots. Drake May has shown some good stuff. Looks like he could actually be a guy, so maybe that's not a bad pick, but you put him in a bad situation, and you just got to hope that you don't ruin him. Because if you don't ruin him, I think he can be successful when you get him weapons and you get him an offensive line, but you already have him get beat up, and we've seen it time and time again. When quarterbacks get beat up a ton early in their career, it's terrible for their development, and it's just terrible for their future prospects. So hopefully they can find a way to protect him better. And Titans, they're going to be an interesting situation because what do they do in this draft? Do they go quarterback and go throw a guy into the fire, or do they try and rebuild their team first? It's interesting to see, though. You've got the Giants projected below them, and then you just got a whole mess of teams here that we'll see how it all sorts itself out. Saints are going to move up this list because they suck, and we'll see what they do, too, because they're kind of in that same boat where they're all honestly a mess at this point. But Shadur, interesting discussion. I don't know what would happen if a quarterback, maybe it's Cam Ward, is projected to go to the Panthers. Do you think he would do a similar thing, or would he not? Because you really don't see this much, but you're starting to see a recent trend of all these quarterbacks going to these terrible situations and their leash getting yanked from them. So it's something that if I was a rookie going in the league, I would at least give thought to.
Yeah, I think you have to. I mean, it's like everything I said. I mean, you at the end of the day, you want what's best for your career. NFL careers are short. Um, and quarterbacks are a very unfair stick sometimes. They're given a very fair stick sometimes, and sometimes a very unfair stick. Um, but for a young guy, you don't want to throw that. You don't want to get put in that situation. You don't. Um, I I I wouldn't. I mean, Cam Moore would probably take it. I mean, he's a guy who, you look at that like, well, if I'm going that high, that's a lot of money. I mean, Caleb Williams got what, $25 million signing bonus? I mean, that's 25 M's. Sure, I get beat up a couple times for 25 M's. Why not? Um, but I mean, it is. I mean, if I was these teams, I'd be trying to rebuild other pieces because it's just only going to help the quarterback, really. Um, I don't know if the Panthers draft a quarterback. I mean, if they do that, they're gonna go and put themselves in the Cleveland Browns situation for all those years where every single year they just draft a fucking quarterback instead of like imagine if they use just 5 of those QB picks to just go get something else and just how much better their team probably would be, you know? So I mean, even with the Giants, I mean fuck, they just need an O line, right? Uh, you give fucking Daniel Jones all that money, whatever. Um, you give him some weapons. Um, the Titans, I mean, he just need a new damn team, really. Being honest, they got a lot to do. Um, Saints, fuck, get cheaper, get younger. I mean, it's only gonna get worse, at least on the defensive side of the ball. Go get some playmakers, you know, um, because they look fucking bad. Um, who else?
And
Who else is
you
ass
got
ass?
Giants 2-6, Raiders 2-6, Jaguars 2-6, Dolphins 2-5. I mean, they're a team that we just talked about. They probably will improve and not be in this mess as long as Tua stays healthy, but also a team that's getting old, has a lot of holes. Then Browns 2-6, Jets 2-6.
Quickly talk about the Texans because there's just Stephon Diggs is officially tore his ACL. He's out. Um, man, that fucking sucks. I traded for Stephon Diggs like 3 weeks ago. Every time I trade for Stephon Diggs, just some disastrous shit happens. Either he starts sucking ass or he dies, and he died this time. Um, I feel bad for him. He's on an expiring contract. He's getting a little older. Um, receivers coming off of an ACL, he might be hitting that Brandon Cooks. I mean, he's better than Brandon Cooks, but he might be hitting that Brandon Cooks career arc at this point. Um, hey, do the Saints give him a try? You know, he'll probably be hella cheap next year. Him and Chris Godwin. Fuck it.
He's not coming here. Chris Godwin, I mean, he probably wouldn't come here either, but that would be a very interesting pickup. I mean, Diggs, he's going to go. It's going to be another move like the Texans move where he's just going to go somewhere to win because he's at that stage of his career where just go try and he's gotten a lot of money. If he could he would probably be fine to take a little bit smaller deal to go somewhere that he thinks he could go win a ring. And I think that'd be a smart move for him and a smart move for the team that gets him because if he's able to be anything like Stephon Diggs and he's on a cheap contract, what a pickup that is. But it sucks for him. Sucks for the Texans now because all of a sudden they're looking a little bit depleted. I mean, I know Nico's supposed to probably come back in a couple weeks, but until then, you all of a sudden went from a team that had maybe the best receiving core in the league to having Tank Dell and whoever else.
But this is once again a situation of you invest in receivers. They lost their top 2 receivers and they still have a guy that's really good. Imagine that. They have a guy who's not a practice squad player or an undrafted guy or anything like that that you can lean on. And that's important.
What, you're saying you don't want to lean on a receiving core of Mason Tipton and Bub Means?
Believe it or not, no, you don't. Uh, Not when they're wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 in their first years. No, definitely not. What are your thoughts on CJ Stroud with all this, man? Because CJ Stroud has been struggling a little bit. Um, and I mean that offense took a fucking running turn. I didn't think they would be running the ball this much. And Joe Mixon is just, I guess, the best fucking back in the league, I suppose. Um,
Well, the running turn is an interesting thing because they did try and do that last year too. Like, that was a bit of their identity, and it would get them in a lot of long yardage situations. They just ended up converting. But this Texans offense, this is something that it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on because I don't want to say they are overrated at this point because they're just not performing well. I think that they're a team that could turn it around because of the talent they have, but they have an offensive line that is just playing awful. Like, Joe Mixon, despite breaking off a big run, it feels like, every single week to have a good-looking stat line. Their run game is one of the worst in the league. They have one of the lowest rushing success rates every single week, and if you take away the big plays that they break off, which you always have to give credit for big plays, because if you're able to get them, then you're obviously able to get it. But you also have to discount the fact that if you have one 60-yard run and your running back puts up 100 yards on 20 carries, that means that he had 19 carries for 40 yards and then one carry for 60 yards. And that's kind of what the Texans' run game is like. You'll have a big explosive play as long as Mixon's in there. If he's out, then their run game's just cooked, besides Dameon Pierce having that random week where he became an NFL running back again. But they can't run the ball and they can't pass block, so CJ's under tons of pressure. And it's not a good team right now. I mean, they're a good team, but it's not a good unit. It's weird to see. I mean, I guess this just really goes down to you need to have a good offensive line, but it feels like the past 2 years for the Texans are backwards. It feels like how they played last year is how they should be playing this year, and how they're playing this year is how they should have played last year, as a team with a rookie quarterback and a team that wasn't expected to do anything. But, I mean, they have a good defense still, and their defense will keep them in games. Offensively, they can make plays. They don't really have a good offense, and also, I don't really know how much I love their play calling, because it's kind of one of those situations where it's kind of predictable where they run the ball, and they aren't efficient with it, and then they set themselves up more than any other team in the league in long yardage situations.
I think you're right. I mean, they are going backwards, and that's just kind of odd to see. And I don't really know why, but I think for the Texans, I think we mentioned already. I mean, just invest in your O line, and I think you'll end up being better. But I'm gonna leave it to you, man. For the rest of this, I gotta dip out of here. Got to go to workouts in the next 10 minutes. Um,
Well, I think that's a good point to call it anyway. I think we've really covered most of the main storylines. Didn't get to the Saints, but, I mean, if you want to give some rapid-fire thoughts on them, there's not too much to take away from that team.
get healthy. Fire Dennis Allen. I mean, that's where we're at.
That's it. And Rattler might not be the savior that the fans were hoping for. But nobody would be on this team right now. They just suck. It's just a tank. I mean, we'll see how things go. But overall, this was a very entertaining week. We had a lot of very entertaining games, and we still have a complete mess of the league where there's just so many teams jumbled close together to each other. And on the flip side, you have the Ravens losing. So it just seems like every week you're just flip-flopping who is the best team in the league and who's good and who's not. So it's been a good season. Parity is back, and hopefully we get to see a good season the rest of the way.